This is the Marketing Agency Power Hour, and I'm your host, Cal Wilder. Each week, we'll power through discussions on business challenges, success stories, and game-changing strategies. This show is sponsored by SmartBooks, provider of bookkeeping and accounting for marketing agencies. Let's get started. So I'm really interested to speak with today's guest. He's an entrepreneur, a founder, a marketing expert, and a social media strategist. He's a seasoned marketer who's got over 30 years of experience with specializations in digital and social media marketing, along with communication planning. He worked as a manager at a number of agencies before starting his own later in his mid-40s. So I think we'll probably talk about that experience as well. But he is the founder and president at Fifth Influence. George Potts, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Cal. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be speaking with you. Thank you for sharing your experience.
Yeah, happy to. I'm honored that you invited me to participate.
So let me ask you, same question I usually ask at the beginning of these episodes. What is the single most powerful strategy for success in your firm these days?
Yeah, our single most powerful strategy for Fifth Influence is our positioning. We have a very strong, narrow position. We work with Democratic political campaigns, liberal issue advocacy groups, and future-focused brands. So we're a digital-first agency, but that narrow positioning is our greatest strength. We're not, many things to many different people. We are one thing to a very narrow vertical that we are targeting.
Has that always been your focus since you started the agency?
It has, actually. I mean, that's one of the reasons I started the agency. I'd worked for a bigger independent agency, not a holding company, but a bigger independent agency that worked across a whole plethora of types of clients: healthcare, consumer packaged goods, B2B services, et cetera. And that's challenging in this day and age. And so I wanted to have something a little bit more boutique, a little bit more ownable from a positioning standpoint.
And what are the consequences of that niche with the kinds of employees you hire? Do they all have to be, card-carrying Democrats to work in your business, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, Kyle, it's an excellent question. Well, as an employer, you are not allowed to ask a potential employee's political affiliation. That is not allowed. However, because we wear our position, because we're overt about it, individuals who are not comfortable with our positioning aren't applying to work with us, and so I don't have to ask that. And actually, it attracts talent because we are so narrow and passionate about what we do. We don't have to worry about a disconnect between the positioning and what an individual may believe in regards to their political affiliation.
And you haven't had any trouble attracting clients. I guess big marketplace, a lot of people in your target demographic who can hire you, right?
Yeah. Attracting the clients. I mean, just as in any advertising agency, it is an extremely competitive business. It's a very difficult, tough business. And so there is a lot of competition, even with our narrow positioning. But given the background of the personnel that work with us, primarily myself and our team, we're able to overcome. Most agencies with our positioning were founded by individuals that worked in the field, meaning they worked on political campaigns and they did field work, door knocking, organization, stuff like that. Not many have a steeped background in advertising for consumer packaged goods companies, big brands. So that's a differentiator for us.
Okay. And so when you get engaged with a client, do you tend to, be part of the marketing team? What are the other components that typically exist with a client? And maybe if you're looking for partners with other agencies or anything, you could talk a little bit about that.
So let's break it across the three pillars of clients that we have. So when it comes to political campaigns, it depends on the level of the campaign. So let's talk about a down ballot campaign. A down ballot campaign could be a state rep, a state senator, a mayoral race, a regional governmental race, judicial or executive, or council. In those cases, those teams tend to be small, and we're doing a lot of different things for those clients, from running their digital to direct mail to building a website, et cetera. as those clients rise in regards to, when I say clients, as the political office rises, if it's a federal House seat, a federal Senate seat, a gubernatorial, a governor's race, a presidential race, then there's more agencies at the table. It's more like a big brand where you have a stable of agencies. And on those bigger races, we stick in our lane from a digital standpoint. So it depends on the level of race. When it comes to issue advocacy, again, it depends on whether we're working with a local chapter of an advocacy organization or a advocacy organization that's just in a regional area versus a national. National issue advocacy organizations work with a plethora of agencies based on narrow expertise, PR, digital, creative, etc. Smaller, regional, or local, we do more for them. And then when it comes to future focused client brands, typically they're the stable of agencies, and we stay in our digital first lane when it comes to those.
Okay. And how have you found this focused approach has led to success? Just in terms of attracting clients or delivering great service, earning referrals, talk to me about how this niche-based approach has really worked well for you.
Yeah. So from that this niche that we have, certainly word of mouth. We advertise the agency in certain places like Politics PA and in publications like Qberg and that are targeting our types of clients. But it's a lot of word of mouth. And it's given what we do. We're very adept in fundraising, which is important both to political campaigns and issue advocacy. Fundraising carries over to conversion events. So for-profit clients like it because if you can raise money for a nonprofit, an issue advocacy organization, a political candidate, that bodes well to help them sell product or service if they're aligned. Um, and that's where the niche comes in, right? It comes in regards to, well, you only work with Democrats or liberal issue advocacy. You're personally passionate about these issues. That carries through to both the creative quality of the work as well as the strategy. Because at the end of the day, we have a vested interest in success because we're trying to advance certain legislation or certain candidates to office to achieve certain legislation.
Okay. And you're in the Pittsburgh area, right?
We're headquartered in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, although we do business throughout the United States. And recently, we likely will have our first international client in the next week or two.
What? Where's that?
I can't. We're under an NDA, so I can't reveal the exact organization. But what I can tell you is it will be this organization exists in the European Union.
Okay, cool. I spoke with RJ Hubert, who's also from Pittsburgh, who knows you. He's going to be on the show in a couple weeks, I think.
Oh, that's awesome. We're actually having coffee. He just reached out. We're having coffee. We get together like maybe once every other month. Yeah, great guy.
Cool. Um, do you have any challenges like staying on top of the what is defined as a liberal issue that your firm is interested in supporting? It just seems like the definition of liberal and conservative and Democrat Republican is kind of changing a lot versus like what it was when I was in school studying this 30 years ago. Um, but I guess, you're a small enough firm, you can kind of decide for yourself, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it depends. I mean, there is, if you talk about it like a presidential election, there's always a broad consortium of voters that help elect someone at the presidential level. As you come down in regards to elected office, those issues tend to narrow. But no, we don't. I mean, we really have not had any issues. There are some, for instance, our agency, we are pro gun control. However, we're headquartered in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I grew up a hunter. Um, it's a very, very strong Second Amendment region. Okay. And so there are certain realities with that. Like our lead designer, Billy Joe, who's also one of the top drag queens in Pittsburgh, is also a gun owner. He has a concealed carry permit. Right. And so now he also believes though that there should be, and we don't necessarily agree in regards to the levels of gun control in exact legislation, but yes, there's a general consensus in regards to certain types of legislation that we want to advance and help clients advance.
So what are your objectives for yourself in running your agency? What's your dream or big hairy audacious goals over the next few years for the agency?
Yeah, so we'll be in existence for 8 years this June. Candidly, we're behind the business plan that I had put forward due to COVID and
Everybody's always behind.
yeah, we're always behind. So, but we've had we've had top level growth every year, pretty sizable top level growth over each year. So I'm happy about that. Want to increase profitability, but the long term goal is to get the agency to about 10 to 15 million over the next 7 years, and then we'll pause. Or when I say we, I'll pause. I'll be 62 at that time, and I'll pause and I'll look at the business and make a decision to say, okay, I'm going to put another 7 years in growing this to the next level, or look at an exit event. And that exit event could be um, selling the agency to the employees, or to a group of employees, or to being acquired, or a merger. But that's the goal. I'm looking for an equity event with the agency.
And yeah, I assume you're open with your employees, especially since you're talking about this on the podcast now. They know that's going to happen at some point.
I'm extremely transparent about the agency. I've had great mentors, Michael Bruner in particular, who founded Blattner Bruner, rebranded Bruner. Um, he would always, when we did the quarterly meetings, he'd open the books and show the books to the entire agency. And the agency, at any given time, in the time I worked there, was between 140, 170 people. Like, there's no mystery. I run my agency the same way. There's no mystery. I'm also a servant leader. No one, I do not make significantly more than anyone else in the agency. When we are profitable, I put 100% of those profits back into the agency for our growth. So um, there are perks in being an owner. Like, no one's on my shoulder telling me when to do something or so forth. But from a financial standpoint, it's a boutique firm of a group of equals, and I'm sincere in making sure that people are equally compensated, I want to say equal, fairly compensated in role and so forth.
Yeah, that's always the one of the big challenges for business owners, I feel like, is how open to be, how much of an open book to be. And I remember when I was young, my first business, I was probably mid to late 20s at the time, and we'd grown to a point we could afford to hire a controller, and we hired like a 60-year-old guy who'd been a controller at divisions of public companies before. And he made a comment to me once. He said, everybody assumes you're probably making more money than you are. So you might as well just be open about what's actually going on. Otherwise, they're going to make up stories and think you're richer than you are.
That's exact. In fact, I'm very open about that. Uh, Over half the agency actually makes more than I do, but I'm building something for an equity event. I'm not concerned about short-term compensation from an annual standpoint.
So how do you view kind of, you're in heavy growth mode now, and then you're going to get to a point where if you're looking for an exit event, profitability is going to become a bigger focus. So how do you think you go about kind of deciding when to make that transition from growth to profit margins?
I think you do it in steps, and it's gradual. But the biggest thing, when you sell an agency, the agency has to have expertise. Okay. In our business and in advertising, clients don't stay a long time. Like, even when I left Bruner, the years of 4 or 5 year retainers are over. Okay. In our business, political campaigns, 50% of the clients on average lose. They go away, right? Or they win, and they're not running again for another 6 years if it's a Senate office. So one of the things that we're doing right now is establishing our best practices process, so it's repeatable, right? So if someone acquires it, it's not like they're acquiring something just based on our relationships or just the positioning. There are best practices and processes in place that they're buying that provide value. And we've already started that. Well, the early years, it was all in our heads. It's all documented. We've put certain technology platforms in place that utilize those best practices and value. So that's number one. Number two, certainly profitability. Profitability in the advertising business is very difficult. Every agency I've ever worked at, no agency made more than 20 points in a year. When I worked at Bruner, the goal was always 14. I think in the 10 years that I worked there, we made 14 points 2 or 3 times. Our goal at Fifth Influence is 14 points. We've only made that once in the 7 years that I've run the agency. So profitability, but I think most people acquiring an agency understand that the margin is thin. But how you achieve profitability is having systems and processes that are repeatable. So you don't have high hours investment from your time you're engaged in a project.
How much do you feel like you've been able to rely on software to do that versus just training people on getting people who believe in systems and process and consistency?
Yeah. It's both. I mean, you need people to convince, to want to do it, but you have to have the platform. So one of the platforms we made an investment this past year, both in a hire to build it out as well as the subscription. But we use money.com for all of our project management, for moving over from client review documents to doing client reviews right in Monday. So there's been growing pains with that. I'm 54 years old. Um, I am very adept at picking up platforms, but it's about routine. So everyone in my family is an endurance athlete, cross country, long distance running, cycling, etc. It's all about having a routine and sticking to that routine. And if you don't, then it all falls apart, right? Well, that's the hardest thing. When you change routine, that's the hardest thing to do. And so that's what we've been doing this past year and introducing Monday. Certainly AI. We've fully embraced AI over the last 2 years. We have standard queries that have to be used. I mean, you can evolve them, adapt them, but we've built numerous queries within certain project folders that have to be used to at least get the baseline of what we're looking for.
In terms of like evaluating competitive positioning, or what are these queries used for?
Everything from research. So we use them from a research standpoint. We use them to develop proposals and statements of work. We use them to write copy. We use them to develop visuals. So on the visual design side, we have queries that we've developed to help get at certain visuals that we need. It's really across the entire enterprise in every single function, whether that is content production on the video side, whether that's design, whether that's copywriting, and then in regards to actually operating the business.
So what's a challenge you're currently grappling with, or something you recently had to overcome?
Excellent question. There's never a week, a month, a quarter without challenges. Um, the biggest challenge we're overcoming at the moment is we made an investment in a new business development professional last year. That investment did not pay off. Great individual, whether it wasn't a good fit or where this person was at, but significant human resource investment, salary investment without return. And so we anticipate we'd be much farther along based on this investment. And so this year, as opposed to being in a place where we thought we would make additional hires based on this investment and growth in work, um, our goal is to have a little bit of top line growth, but we acquired debt with this investment last year. And so it's to have a little bit of top line growth, be profitable, but pay down this debt. That's the challenge that from a financial standpoint, that's the biggest challenge in 2026 for us.
Yeah, I mean, small business owners hiring their first salesperson or business development person is always a challenge, and it often, unfortunately, doesn't work out. And if you're a large company, you can take a portfolio approach. You can say, well, I'm going to hire three salespeople, and one or two of them are going to work out. One or two of them are not for whatever reason. But at the end of the year, at least I'm going to have one, hopefully two good salespeople on the team. Um, but when you're hiring, one, it's 0 or 1. It's gonna work out or it's not, and then you're stuck, right? You get lucky if it works out.
Yeah. Yeah. And in a boutique agency like ours, it was, in anything like you have to take, I mean, you're an entrepreneur. you have to take risks, right? They may be calculated. So like this individual that we hired for business development came from another agency that was very successful. But our positioning, this other agency is very general, right? And this individual we came to learn it would be more inbound than bird dogging type of work, right? And in what we do, there's not a lot of inbound. There's a ton of bird dog and so while it's word of mouth, you still have to contact the campaign, the candidate, the political consultants. They're not always most of the time they're not knocking on our door, but they're aware of us. But we have to go and demonstrate our interest in working on that campaign for that candidate or with this organization. This is a little bit different. So
Yeah. When I've had sales hires that have not worked out, I've always kind of looked in the mirror and said, well, why didn't this work out? Did I not put them in the right position to be successful? Did we not have the right structure? Did we not equip them with the right strategy to follow? Did we not manage them closely enough to make sure they did the weekly activities they needed to do that, might not get done if you're not super motivated, especially if you're working remotely? So it's always challenging, to get those good business development slash sales hires and get them successful.
yeah, and we agree. In this case, we believe, and when I say we, there because there's other people that have a voice in regards to the activity, but activity provides opportunity, and really the activity was you know a lot of reliance on marketing we're already doing, like that the outbound email series. I'm like, okay, well that's not sales, that's just marketing. So, and we would identify a lot of the target prospects, but what we need someone to do because of time is make the phone calls, send personal emails, really, really pursue the business as opposed to, yes, I got the phone call or the email and now I'm going to pursue it. So, yeah. And that's on me. Like I'm not a micromanager. This individual was in their late 40s, actually turned 50 over the year. I, in addition to not micromanaging someone that senior, I don't believe I have to sit on a weekly basis and like, okay, let's review who you called this week. Let's review the emails that you sent. Let's talk about who you talked to. I don't believe in that. If it was a junior person in their 20s, I would do that, but not for someone that's senior.
So I got to ask you the obligatory question or two about how you go about managing your books and finances at your agency, since that's my day job. How do you go about doing that? Who do you have do the work? How do you oversee it? And what kind of financial reports do you like to get?
Yeah. So I'm intimately involved in the books. So we have for from a taxation standpoint, we have an accounting firm. They provide some strategic recommendations at a very high level. Then we have a part-time, I won't even say bookkeeper, helps with payroll, certain challenges in QuickBooks, things of that nature. But what I do is I dedicate typically in my work week between 4 and 6 hours, maybe 8 hours sometimes, to the actual books. Everything from invoicing to vendor relationships, etc. I'm always looking at the cash flow forecast. I'm always looking at the aging report. Um, Often, I'm also looking at in regards to percentage of payroll to overall revenue because in an advertising agency, there's a formula in regards to you got to keep that in between 40 and 60%. When your payroll goes over 60%, that's when you start really getting into trouble when it comes to revenue. Yeah, but I'm literally in QuickBooks almost every day. I try to though to chunk my time where I'm not pulling me away from other tasks and I'm like, okay, like typically I do invoicing on Saturday mornings. That's my routine. So I'm typically doing vendor stuff on Monday mornings before getting into other stuff. But I have like chunks of time during the week that I do certain financial tasks. And on the forecasting side, big on forecasting, looking 12 months out, so I can anticipate whether we need hires, we can't afford certain things that we were doing, stuff like that.
Great. Sounds like you're on top of it.
Well, I always like, I'd always like to be more on top of it.
Yeah. Is there anything you've learned the hard way on the accounting and finance side that you would do differently if you had a do over?
Yeah, there's actually several things. So number one, early on in founding the agency, neither of my parents have, my dad is like, has an associate's degree, but didn't go to college, came from working class backgrounds, not a lot of financial savviness. And there was no one in my ear in my 20s, and not until really my early 30s, telling me how important it is to put money away for retirement and compounding interest and things of that nature. So when I founded the agency, I created a 401k program that has a 3% safe harbor, which means even if an employee puts nothing in, we're still putting 3% of their salary in. I would have liked to had a little bit more guidance from our accounting firm and um, the firm that put the 401k together in regards to what maybe other alternatives, like a simple IRA, something like that, because the 401k has some, for a small agency, has some pretty hefty. I don't. They're not management charges, but yeah, it has to be audited every year.
Yeah,
Right.
it's compliant. There's a lot of compliance. Well, more compliance with a 401k than a simple IRA plan.
That's right. And there's time and there's cost of that compliance, the actuarial firm, things of that nature. Um, and for a small firm to manage that and to manage the safe harbor, there's a lot to it. There probably would have been an easier way, but now that we're 7, 8 years in, actually making the transition will be just as problematic as just keeping it. But I would say that. Secondly, we actually no. I mean, I was very savvy early on. I used my whole life insurance to get an equity line through a private bank. So from the get go, I had an equity line, that most startup agencies wouldn't have, and then we have two other equity lines. And so for a small agency, we're actually well, I forget what's the financial term we use. We're well capitalized from an equity line standpoint, right? Which really helps in managing the cash flow, which a lot of others may not be able to do, at our size. I think the other thing, um, in regards to financial management, we got rid of timesheets 2 or 3 years ago. I came up through the business with those, always despised them. We're, we're pretty good at managing without the timesheets. Sometimes I miss them, but the reality is people fill them out late. They lie. Like, it's not the best barometer of productivity, of someone in an agency. But without that, so it's been a little bit challenging. I use the salary. I know what people are working on. They block their time. I look at it from a salary standpoint. But that's been a transition and a challenge.
Yeah, that's a hot button issue in the accounting firm space too that I deal with. We do timesheets at SmartBooks because it is the single largest cost. And, we have 100 clients or more that we're supporting each month, and I can't just eyeball it and get my gut feel anymore. We're too big for that. But we do try to. My goal is nobody should ever have to sit down and like fill in a timesheet spreadsheet. Like we used an application that has timers. We should be very task management driven on our professional service automation system. So you start working on a task, you click start, the time automatically gets captured. When you're done, you click stop, you go on to the next thing. And at the end of the week, you don't have to really do anything aside from submit the timesheet. You're not actually filling it out. So we try to make it easy, but I haven't given up on timesheets yet.
Yeah, yeah. We'll never go back. I mean, especially as I rose in an agency. If you're in a small agency or you're in a bigger agency and you're in management, you have to do time not just by client, but by function. Well, like if my VP of content production is doing concepting, well, that's one function. If he's directing, that's another function. If he's producing, that's another function. If he's editing, well, we can't afford to have someone set aside 8 hours a week to fill in timesheets by function by client. We at any given time we're carrying 32 to 40 clients. we're well diversified. If any client leaves, we're not going under, right? But that's a lot of clients, and everyone has a lot of functions. And so to actually keep time takes a lot of time. And I'm like, okay, that's not productive. So we're going to get rid of that.
So what excites you about the future, George, about your firm or your industry?
Yeah. Well, what excites me about, I'm not excited about, again, I can be open. I'm not excited necessarily who's in the federal executive office. However, when it comes to political work, it's recession resistant. You know, there's always house races every 2 years. There's always mayoral and typically executive offices, governor's offices every 4 years. There's always Senate races either at the state level or at the federal level every 6 years. So there's always work. That really excites me about the business. And pendulums always swing, right? Like Democrats are not going away. Republicans, I have great, one of my best friends was chief of staff for Connie Mack Jr. And so you can have friends across the aisle. That excites me. When it comes to the issue advocacy, also somewhat recession proof to some degree, right? There's always going to be passion in either maintaining legislation that's on the books or advancing legislation to ensure that certain programs are available, rights are not taken away, et cetera. And then on the future focused brands, what excites me is as we scale, being able to go after brands that wear, like us as an agency, wear their politics on their sleeve. Like a dream client for us would be Patagonia or REI, where they're completely aligned. They sell products and services, but they're also very they're involved in advocacy, where not a lot of private companies are involved in advocacy.
Yeah. And it's tough to decide whether to be, you know, wear your politics on your sleeve or not, because you're going to alienate like half the people out there in the country if you do, potentially, if you don't do it well. Um, but how do you advise clients? I can tell you're a fan of transparency and openness, but, you say you've got a business to consumer client you're thinking about working with, and they're not sure they want to, take a stand on different political issues because they're worried they're going to alienate half their customer base.
It has to align with their business, right? Like we don't. And so if a for-profit company comes to us because of our expertise in these other areas, but they don't want the political aspect of it, we don't bring that to the table. We just don't ask them to change how we position the agency, right? But if a client was asking us, should they get involved in a certain issue, we would say, is it materially important to the business? All right. For instance, we work with a roofing company. Okay. That roofing company has 7 different business units. One of those business units is solar. The fact that the federal subsidy to place solar panels on your roof went away in December is not advantageous for their business. So in that case, I would say yes, they should advocate to keep that legislation on the books. Okay. Um, Similar to certain subsidies for solar in other areas. And if you don't, then that could hurt your business. But it has to line with the business. So if you're a consumer packaged goods product, like if you're Coca-Cola, let's just take Coke for instance. Unless leadership is passionate about an issue and okay with alienating a certain portion of their patrons, the people that buy their customers, no, right? However, if it impacts their business, then they should look at that and be smart and strategic about how to do it, right? Like it shouldn't just be take a position like, well, what are you going to do? Are you actually going to help certain candidates get elected? Or you want to advance list, like what is it that you want to do? You just can't say, oh yeah, we're gonna take this position. Like, what do you want to get out of it? What's the end game?
Right, right. Makes sense. Cool. So, George, did you think when you were little George that you'd be one day owning and running your own business?
Yeah, we talked about this in the prep for the podcast for the taping. Um, Not necessarily advertising. I think we talked about um, I was always I was always leading things. Like I would be the one to organize people to go play flat, like well, not flat. It was tackle in the 70s. I mean, tackle without it. I was the one that would organize to play tackle football or get all the kids together to go BMX riding. In fact, or like even creatively, um, on 8 millimeter cameras, we actually shot a movie. Yeah, I think I was like 12 or 13, and in the woods, stuff like I was always, organized. So I always thought I'd be in some type of leadership position. Number one. Number two, in my teen years, I always knew that I wanted to try to leave some type of legacy in whatever I wanted to make an impact in whatever I did, a positive impact. And so that also, leads to leadership. Um, Now I was a political science major, and so probably would have thought I was going to run for office or do something in that regard. But this is how my career manifested. So
Cool. So what prompted you to take the leap and open your own firm 7 years ago?
yeah, so uh, very successful career working for others. Number one, particularly Michael Bruner at Bruner. But we had done a Super Bowl campaign for 84 Lumber back in 2017. In fact, it's 9 years today. I literally got the reminder. I got the image on Facebook in regards to it was 9 years today that we were running the war room for the Super Bowl campaign. So when we did that Super Bowl campaign, invested probably it was a good 3 or 4 months, 15 to 17 hours a day, every day except for Christmas. And when I came off that campaign, um, which won a bronze lion, by the way, a Cannes lion. So anyone it's quite an accomplishment. You can pine your entire career to work on a Super Bowl campaign and never make it happen. So worked on a Super Bowl campaign, helped lead the digital team on that, social, etc. And just reflected my kids. Well, I had one daughter at Syracuse on a full ride Division 1 scholarship. My other son, we could cover the college tuition. He was going to University of Colorado. We live frugally. I'm like, okay, I'm 47. I'm 46. I'm going to be 47. I want to start. I always wanted to have my own agency and couldn't do it when I was young. I got married young. I had kids young. Needed financial security. I'm like, okay, now's if I'm going to do it. Like I don't have a lot of runway. Let's do it. And Michael Bruner actually, when I gave him the news, he counts. He's like, "Are you?" He's like, "You are 47." He's like, "You are in the ad business. This is not a business that's kind to older professionals, and you're at the latter end of your career. Do you want to really take that leap? Because you don't need to. You could stay here. You're going to be here. You'll likely be a partner one day." I said, "No, I really want to do this." And so, yeah, it was a big jump, you know, but I wanted to, and financially I could. I was blessed, and I could. So
And you had shared with me last week when we spoke, some questions you got from initial clients you were pitching about your age and how you had to navigate ageism in the advertising industry, right?
I mean, it is very yeah, it's always been that way in the industry. There's a perception that the young creative, the young copywriter is more innovative and creative than someone that has years of experience. Um, Digitally, like I've grown out my beard the last few weeks because in Pittsburgh it's been under 30 for 4 weeks. It's gonna we have another week. It's gonna be in the 40s. I'll probably shave it, but I mean, there's a lot of gray hair, right? And so no hair here, gray hair here. And yeah, sometimes when I walk in, and I think it's happened for the first time 2 years ago, literally walked into a pitch and to my face said, "You're the person that's going to talk to me about social media marketing." It's the first time that ever happened. And my response was like, "Well, let's talk for 5 minutes. And if you don't think I know what I'm talking about or I'm full of shit, we'll just end it. We don't even have to go beyond 5 minutes, right? Like, but you brought me in, at least let me talk to you for 5 minutes. But that's a reality, right? Like, when I bring up stuff sometimes in meetings and I talk about a TikTok trend, or I talk about using Grinder to reach a certain target audience, people will, like, they'll have this face like, why do you know? Like, you should know that. Um, and it's a shame because when I started my career, I believe in lifelong learning. And my biggest critique of students and young professionals that I talk to, which at 10 a.m. today, I literally talked to a graduate student at the University of Pittsburgh who's looking for a job. And I said, okay, well, what do you read to stay abreast of? He wants to be in marketing and advertising for the consumer entertainment industry. I said, what do you read? He's like, well, I don't really read anything. I just watch some YouTube videos. I said, you need to get a subscription to Ad Age, because that is the premier domestic publication that covers the advertising industry. Do you read Variety? No. I said, get a subscription to Variety because Variety covers LA and the entertainment industry. Do you read Wired? He's like, what's Wired? I'm like, Wired covers the digital facets of consumer entertainment. I said, and if you don't read these things, how can you be knowledgeable about the industry you're going to operate? Um, just because, and I think that's lost sometimes in the advertising industry, is that you can be in your 40s, 50s, and 60s and still a student of the industry and learning new things every day. Age does not mean diminished capacity to learn and apply new things.
Yeah, I was listening to a book last summer on a road trip with my family. I forget what it's called. It might have been like, I can't remember. But the gist of it was, when you're in the second half of your life or your career, you have a lot of benefits around drawing upon experience and compiling information and applying judgment that you don't have that ability to do when you're young. And, people win Nobel Prizes usually based on the scientific work they do when they're in their 20s. And so if you just need pure brain power, yeah, you might need to be a little bit younger. But if you're in an industry or a position where it's about consolidating life experience and different opinions and facts and coming to a good decision, you're a lot better at that when you're a little older.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So cool. So, um, you've got to stay up on a lot of things, right? You're reading all these periodicals, a lot's evolving and changing in the advertising industry. You've got the whole AI shakeup happening, and you've got clients who are, I assume, pretty demanding, need quick turnarounds on things. So how do you just stay on top of everything and find some time for a personal life too?
Yeah, well, not a lot of personal life. If my wife was here, she'd chime in. She's like, "You need more of that." But um, firm believers at the agency, like I block time. So in my calendar, I block time. Ideally, I would like to consume information after 3, to have like 3 to 7 or 3 to 6 just to consume. Because we have boutique, I can't do that. So a lot of my consumption is later. It's like it starts at 7 or 8, and then I'll read for 2 to 3 hours until I find myself nodding off. Try to do that 4 nights a week. I don't consume a lot of. I block time for it because I should consume pop culture and television, but I'm more of a reader. So I actually block time to make sure I stay abreast of pop culture and make sure I'm watching things and things of that nature. But most of it's reading Monday through Thursday is what I'm doing, typically between 7 and 10 or 8 and 11. That's where I fit it in, and that encompasses everything from Ad Age to the Wall Street Journal to the New York Times to the Drum, which is the Drum's the equivalent of Ad Age in the UK. It's more international, to more narrow types of podcasts like Pod Save America, Scott Galloway's pod. He has a whole family of podcasts. To books, so right around in my front room there. Right now, I'm reading Abundance by Ezra Klein. I'm reading about it's a book by a New York Times reporter about the Iranian Revolution, and then I'm reading a book about it's the business fight between two railroads in the Southwest, and that fight. So I'm reading I'm trying to pull history into the forward and learn from that, and then staying abreast of new things and applying that to the knowledge that I've gained in my career.
It sounds like you're like me. You're always in the middle of two, three, four books at the same time.
Yeah, I think you have to be. I mean, that's the way to go, right? Like I read one or two chapters, and I pull the next book but I always like a symphony of information coming in because you consume it, synthesize it, reflect upon it, and when you do that, you create new knowledge, right? The mosaic, like if you take in a mosaic from 1 inch from your face, right? You may see one or two tiles. That's it. That's your entire perspective. That's your entire worldview. If you step back 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, depending, you're seeing all the tiles, right? And you're seeing the tiles make up this beautiful piece of art. That's the same thing in regards to consuming information. You consume all these different sources, you'll create something new and have a broader perspective on your industry, on your target audience, on the world.
Yeah, I think lifelong learning is key if you're, especially if, in general, but especially if you're in an executive management position, even if it's not directly tied to the business, just keeping the brain active is so important, I think. I've been meaning to ask you, George, about the name of your firm, Fifth Influence. Is there a story behind that name?
Yeah, there's a great origin story. So when we were exploring names for the agency, I didn't want to lay up, and so um, many of my former colleagues at Bruner's like, you should just call it Potts. You're a colorful personality, you're charismatic, you carry it should you have it be your last name. And I'm like, no, because what happens is as you grow, what if I take on a partner and then you put two names together, right? Maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. And then you create an acronym. And so there's an agency in Pittsburgh that was called Garrison Hughes. It was Dave Hughes and Billy Garrison. They left, their employees bought them out, and then they named it GH. Well, what I mean, I'm just not like that. And so then we started exploring, well, what because we're digital first and we have a lot of social media expertise, how does that manifest, right? Like, how can we convey that in a name? Well, when social media first started rising in the late 2000s and in the early 2000 teens, someone had coined it the fifth estate. So journalism is the fourth estate, okay, and digital social media is the fifth estate. Well, what are we expert in? We are expert in helping our clients, whether they're candidates, issue advocacy organizations, or future focused brands, leverage digital and social media to influence their constituencies, prospective customers, voters, right? We're the fifth influence. That's what we do. We are experts in commanding the fifth estate on behalf of our clients. And so, and because all the time, like, well, why not first? Why fifth? And then I get to tell this great story, so.
Cool. Interesting. So, George, really appreciated the time you spent and everything you shared. Listeners, if you need George's expertise, you probably don't have it internally unless you happen to run a political influence based marketing agency, right? So if you want to reach out to George, what's the best way for them to do that, George?
So they can visit our website at fiftinfluence.com. So that's spelled out FIFTH, influence.com. That would be the best way to learn about us. And you could also, look me up on LinkedIn. Searches these days, it's pretty easy to find people. In fact, if you're using AI, you type in Fifth Influence or Chat, it's going to be very easy to find us.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you sharing everything that you did and your openness and transparency, George. Really appreciate that. Wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a great opportunity. If you ever want to revisit and have, a different theme to it, love to come back.
Sure. So this has been another exciting episode of the Marketing Agency Power Hour. We'll see you all next time. Another episode in the books. Thank you so much for tuning in. For show notes and more, please visit marketingagencypowerhour.com. This show is sponsored by SmartBooks, providing marketing agencies with bookkeeping, accounting, and finance support. With SmartBooks, you gain the clarity and confidence to make your agency a success. Until next time.